It's hard to believe at some point that Egypt wasn't a war-torn hellhole, and people could travel across the desert by camel on expeditions. Well, that's what my father did. In the late 80s he traveled the world, and one of his destinations was Egypt. My father loved his adventure, trying to live like he was in a movie, so naturally he wanted to cross the desert, from Egypt to Niger. But, if that went smoothly, he wouldn't have the story to tell. My father has told me this countless times, however he never changes or exaggerates what happened. For 10 years, every detail, every sequence of events, it was all the same, and he swears on his mother's grave he speaks the truth. Now that we have context, I'll green text the rest, since it's much easier and more enjoyable to read than a wall of text. Father in Egypt in the late 80s, decide to cross the desert because adventure action man finds a guide, and is accompanied by one other tourist with the same goal, Brock. The three head out like the wise men once did, slowly riding camels through Sahara heat, chatting among each other. Guide knows decent English. Apparently lots of tourists want to cross the desert. Apparently, getting late, decide to stop for sleep and food. Stop and set up camp, fire, tents, etc. The three of them sit by the fire, and Dad, being Dad, asks if the guide knows any spooky tales. Guide laughs, tells typical tourist mummy BS. Brock and Dad and Guide laughing together over it. Brock says after laughing hard, "No, seriously though, is there anything out here you fear besides criminals?" Guide kind of perks up and shrugs, says he has encountered something once or twice. Talks about the Lord of Sand. Apparently the sand creature takes the form of a tornado, and surrounds you, sucking you down into the sand. Dad thinks it's just a sandstorm or a weather anomaly, so he just laughs it off. Guide isn't laughing, says he has seen things swallowed whole by the desert, the Lord of Sand or not. Guide's seriousness is killing the vibe and Brock notices it, turns around and makes a dumb joke about he's glad his mother isn't there because the desert isn't big enough to suck her down. Crew gets back to fun times and eventually falls asleep. 2 weeks after event, more riding and hanging out having fun. As they ride, a sandstorm begins to hit. By now they've experienced a few, so it's not a big deal, but it seems confined almost. Guide says he feels him coming, pulls out a handgun. Dad thinks what is he gonna do against a sand tornado with a gun? Brock asks him what is he gonna do against a sand tornado with a gun? Guide tells him maybe the noise will scare him off. They don't have a lot of options. Sandstorm dies down, no tornado to be seen. Guide puts away the gun and says maybe I was wrong. Continue the trek until that night, camping again, and the guide says he will be here tomorrow at sunrise. Dad and Brock kind of getting annoyed, tell the guide to stop trying to spook them. Guide again gets serious, almost upset, and tells them not to shrug off what he feels. Guide talks about his super feel powers, knows when the sandstorm will hit. Brock and Dad roll their eyes and call his bluff, ask him when the sandstorm will hit. Guide says sunrise, light sandstorm, break, light again. He arrives. Brock and Dad say K and go to bed, wake up at sunrise, sandstorm, no big deal, clears up, they head out. Guide doesn't say anything. Another light sandstorm. Brock and Dad kind of weirded out. Storm stops and Guide says here, looks at Brock and tosses him the gun. He's after you too, you need it more. As he finishes his sentence, a slight whir can be heard. Guide says with a deadpan tone, good luck. Camels stop moving, freeze in place. Dad and Brock looking around. Dad gets knocked off camel by a strong wind. Mind instantly jumps to Lord of Sand. Brock sees this, fires gun in the air and looks around. Brock suddenly knocked off too. Guide and camels don't move. Sand tornado appears about 50 feet away and beelines for Dad. Brock shoots at it. Tornado stops and charges at Brock. Brock backs up. Tornado catches up to him, starts swirling around him, cutting his skin as he begins to scream, like some kind of crazy action hero movie. He stops screaming as the sand tears him apart. Raised his gun to his head. I'm going out on my own terms, not down to hell with you. Mother effer shoots himself in the head and the tornado vanishes. Dad runs to Brock's body, clearly dead, screams at the guide for help, and the guide tells him to get on the camel before he comes back. Dad doesn't know what to do. He knows they can't take Brock with them. He's dead weight and will just decay. Dad at this point realizes the guide isn't effing around, gets on his camel and they start moving again. Dad keeps looking back and seeing Brock's body, wishing he could do more. Guide notices and tells my dad the sentence he says he hears every time he dreams about Brock. Brock now belongs to the desert, his bones will be eaten and his memory will fade. The Lord of Sand takes another victim, be glad it wasn't you. Dad thinks he's some kind of fortune teller nuthead, but doesn't know what to believe anymore. And that's it. They rode to Niger, the guide wished him luck, and Dad found his way home eventually. Met my mom and had me. He tells me he regrets not trying to at least bury Brock, but he was scared and wanted to get out of there. He doesn't ham up the story and talk about being watched or seeing the fear in Brock's eyes. He says it happened until it didn't anymore and the world kept spinning even though mine was crumbling apart. Hope you enjoyed his tale. I told him I was going to post it online and he told me to go for it. He has no qualms about more people knowing his story. Have a good night, /x/.